In 1999, a family drives through a dark road as all the streetlights go out. Suddenly, their car flips over. Young GA survives, but her parents lie motionless in their seats. Through the shattered car windows, she sees two ghostly figures that resemble her parents. When GA wakes up, she is on a sofa, facing her parents. However, something is terribly wrong. They act strangely, laughing ominously at news reports of a fire and ignoring her severe nut allergy. Feeling that something is off, GA stabs her mother, or rather, the creature pretending to be her, and hides in a storage room. With no way out, a mysterious man appears and tells GA to forget everything she has seen. The next time she opens her eyes, she's back at the scene of the crash, but her parents have disappeared. 21 years pass, and GA is now a grown-up reporter investigating strange occurrences. Meanwhile, a man named Lee Yeon, who has lived for over 1,000 years, is preparing for a wedding. He's not surprised when a sudden downpour disrupts the event, as he knows it signals the presence of a fox bride. Using a bright red umbrella, he approaches the bride and confronts her about her violent past. After allowing her to say goodbye to her husband, a fierce battle ensues. Lee Yeon, with his supernatural speed, defeats the bride, who turns into ash. During the commotion, Jia, who is at the wedding as part of her investigation, spots Lee Yeon and realizes he's the same man she saw all those years ago. The event fuels her curiosity as she continues to pursue her investigation. Her search leads her to traces of fox fur and signs of a struggle, hinting at something beyond the ordinary. Lee Yeon, on the other hand, is not just any fox. He works for the Afterlife Immigration Service. There, he discusses his past choices with Taluipa, who has been like a nanny to him. In exchange for the resurrection of a loved one named Yoon, when a photo of Lee Yeon at the wedding circulates on a TV show, putting him in the spotlight. Meanwhile, GA prepares for a meeting with Lee Yeon, unaware of the secrets she's about to uncover. As she waits at a bus stop, she misses her ride because of a strange encounter with a homeless man. Later, she learns that the bus she missed was involved in an accident on the same road where her parents had died years ago. GA's investigation leads her to the only survivor of the crash, a girl named Soo Young, who reacts in fear at the sight of Lee Yeon's umbrella, believing he's there to harm her. When Lee Yeon arrives at the hospital, Jia seizes the chance to confront him, but there's more to the situation than she knows. Lee Yeon learns that Soo Young was responsible for the accident, and she's not who she seems. She transforms into Lee Rang, Lee Yeon's estranged brother. A fierce battle erupts between the two, with Lee Rang proposing a bet that could have dire consequences. GA witnesses the whole event, but is left confused and searching for answers. Though Lee Yeon tries to erase her memory, GA manages to resist, having cleverly recorded everything. When she loses her balance and falls from a building, Lee Yeon catches her midair, bringing her safely to the ground. GA confronts Lee Yeon by injecting him with a sedative. When he awakens in her apartment, he threatens to take her eyes, but she challenges him, acknowledging that he is her only lead to uncovering the mystery of her parents' disappearance 21 years ago. GA recalls seeing Lee Yeon during the incident in her childhood. Determined to uncover the truth, she shows him a flash drive, which he dismisses. GA tries to outsmart him, even when he momentarily blinds her, suggesting that if she helps him, he will owe her. Meanwhile, back at the immigration center, Uiong instructs a group of souls about their journey through the afterlife. Lee Yeon arrives, convinced Ayum has been reincarnated, but Taluipa warns him that searching for her could alter his fate. Later, Lee Yeon invites GA to meet him at a restaurant. He reveals surprising information. Her parents are not dead, and numerous foxes live secretly among humans. Shocked, GA processes these revelations. Returning to work, GA encounters a bizarre incident in a basement where an office worker turns into a Bulgasari, a nightmare-feeding creature. Lee Yeon fights and captures it. Meanwhile, Lee Yeon confronts his brother by the shore, where they discuss their tumultuous past. Lee Yeon admits he doesn't know where Ayum's reincarnation is, sparking Reng's mischievous delight. Later, GA and Lee Yeon set off on a boat to an island that may hold clues. On the island, as Lee Yeon searches for mint ice cream, GA heads to the docks, hoping to gather information. However, the locals are tight-lipped. Instead, Lee Yeon guides her to a dark, dead forest. They encounter the spirit of a guardian tree, who thanks Jia for freeing her and directs them to head north. During low tide, Jia discovers Jangsansa Cave, a place her parents had visited shortly after she was conceived. Although she had never been there herself, she was present in her mother's womb at the time. In the morning, Lee Yeon offers gifts to two elderly women, insisting they speak to GA. they reveal that human remains have been found on the island before, stretching back to 1954. Jia follows Jinshik into the forest, where he tries to attack her with a hammer, but Lee Yeon intervenes just in time. As Lee Yeon tends to Jia's injuries, she suddenly touches his face and with an eerie tone tells him, "It's me, the one you've been searching for." 12 hours before, a thirsty fisherman drank water from a toilet, but something went terribly wrong, and he ended up drowning himself from drinking too much. When Jia and Lee Yeon arrived at the scene, they found a clump of black hair that carried the scent of Pyonghee. As they continued searching, Jia and Lee Yeon found a strange portrait on the wall of the Dragon King. However, the figure in the painting lacked feet, revealing it as a snake instead. Meanwhile, Ga called her colleague Jae Hwan, asking him to research the island's history. Before she could speak with the old women about the human head, she met with Pyong-hee, who was quietly reading Moby Dick *. But something felt off, and when Pyong-hee's form changed, it was revealed to be Lee Rang. He teased Ga, claiming to know everything about her missing parents, but she realized he was trying to collect on a debt and refused his offer. After Lee Rang left, Lee Yeon appeared, and Ga assured him that she trusted him, not Lee Rang. Feeling relieved, they sat down to eat noodles, and their conversation turned to Lee Yeon's first love, Yum. But their moment was interrupted by a call from Shinju, who reported that a fox had stolen his necklace, challenging Lee Yeon to retrieve it. Ga received a response from the research station about the island's history, showing that important dates were linked to the lunar calendar. Before they could delve deeper, events jumped back to the final moments of the previous day. Lee Yeon rescued Ga, who seemed to be possessed by Yum. Her face and behavior changed, but then the possession ended, and Ga returned to normal, leaving Lee Yeon shaken. Suddenly, Lee Rang arrived, throwing rocks at them, telling Ga to flee as he prepared to face his brother. While Lee Rang and Lee Yeon fought, Ga rushed back to the village, where she encountered a woman who claimed to have known her parents. The woman explained that Ga's parents prayed to the Dragon King for a smooth delivery, hoping their baby would be born healthy. However, Ga sensed the woman was lying. She tried to leave, but the incense in the air made her pass out. Lee Yeon, now free from his fight with Lee Rang, hurried to find Ga. Guided by a swarm of fireflies, he discovered her just in time, as a shaman was preparing to use Ga as a sacrifice to the island. Though trapped behind a magical barrier, Lee Yeon summoned his powers to break through and rescue her. A bolt of lightning destroyed the shaman, and Taluipa sensed that a life had been lost. Though they were safe for now, Lee Yeon and Ga knew there were still dangers ahead. Lee Yeon and Ga wander through the village, only to discover it completely deserted. Down by the shore, they find several dead birds and strange bamboo poles sticking out of the ground, forming an eerie path that seems to be a tribute to the Dragon King. Strangely, all their watches have stopped, frozen at the same time. Back on the mainland, Lee Yeon confronts Rang, questioning the whereabouts of the missing villagers. Despite the tension, Rang remains tight-lipped. As Ga continues her investigation, she uncovers a strange fact. All 41 villagers on the island had no family connections and mysteriously emigrated at the same time. Later, Yeon meets Ga for dinner, and her gestures and expressions remind him of his past love, Yum. Their evening ends with Ga leaving but sending Yeon a thoughtful message. While Ga attends a funeral, Yeon receives his punishment from the afterlife judges, a week in the Snow Mountain prison, confined within a human body. Meanwhile, Lee Rang finds Ga at the funeral and takes pleasure in revealing the truth about Yum to her. Unable to contact Yeon, Ga leaves the funeral, only to find herself plunged into darkness during a sudden blackout. Two mysterious twins appear and begin to strangle her. With her protective talisman missing, Yeon senses her danger and calls upon his granny for help. Yeon's punishment takes him to the underworld of knives, where he's forced to cross a perilous bridge, dodging blades that slice at him from every angle. Despite the pain, his concern for Ga drives him on. Meanwhile, Ga awakens, shivering and weak, only to be rescued by Jae-hwan after collapsing outside the funeral home. He explains that the location used to be a children's cemetery, possibly attracting spirits. However, Ga soon realizes something is wrong when she notices Jae-hwan holding a book upside down. Worse, her talismans are missing, leaving her vulnerable. The twin sisters reappear, demanding that she surrender her body. Just when all hope seems lost, Yeon arrives and manages to save Ga. As she cries over his battered form, a single tear magically revives Yeon, bringing him back from the brink of death. After being revived by Ji-ae's tears, Yeon is taken back to her place, where she tends to the deep knife wounds on his body. As she cares for him, they talk about her past, particularly memories involving 2 fireflies that reminded her of her parents. But through a flashback, it's revealed that it was actually Yeon watching over her from a distance. Elsewhere, a young boy with scales on his neck is seen in a cluttered room. When his nanny checks on him, the boy touches her wrist, spreading a mysterious infection to her. The TVC president downstairs hears her screams but doesn't react, implying he already knows what's going on. Back at Ji-ae's place, Yeon is woken up by Shinju, who bursts in clearly worried. He is surprised to find Ji-ae there and realizes she is now part of Yeon's world. Overwhelmed with relief, Shinju hugs Yeon and introduces himself as his bodyguard and housekeeper in the human world. Before leaving, he shares some helpful advice with Ji-ae. Once alone, Yeon indulges in mint ice cream and talks about his past love, Yoom. Later, Ji-ae takes Yeon to the morgue, where they encounter the spirit twins, Yeon and Min Seo. The twins comment on Yeon's identity as a fox, and a story about child neglect surfaces, hinting at a shared history between them. Eventually, the twins accept their past, embrace their father, and are freed from their spiritual imprisonment. Meanwhile, Lee Rang on his way home. He overhears a dog whining and finds a group of teenagers mistreating it. Alongside Yuri, he deals with them harshly. Afterward, they walk away, but the injured dog follows them. Rang shows reluctance to keep the dog, hinting at painful memories from his past, involving a pet Yeon once gave him that died. Yeon and Ji-ae spend more time together, enjoying a dinner date. When Yeon walks Ji-ae home, 2 fireflies appear, and she realizes it was Yeon who had been watching over her all along. Yeon consults the old totem, the same one who spoke to Ji-ae earlier. After a bit of rough handling, the totem finally reveals that the man in the photograph is the governor. However, Yeon isn't the only one searching. Rang finds the totem later and dangles it over a rooftop, showing that they're both urgently looking for the same thing. Meanwhile, Ji-ae meets with the TVC president, who appears displeased. After their tense meeting, she joins her colleagues, who admire her for managing to speak to him, but Yeon suddenly arrives and sweeps her away, promising to make her dreams come true. They head to a temple, where Ji-ae changes into traditional Joseon attire. Watching from a distance, Yeon rushes to her and passionately kisses her. After Yeon's heartfelt gesture, Ji-ae quickly sees through his actions, realizing he's still thinking about Yoom. She gently touches his face and asks him to see her as she is now. Yeon agrees, and they walk together. They visit a fortune teller. The teller uses an app and claims Ji-ae was a princess in a past life, while Yeon was a laborer. Although it's clearly untrue, he suggests getting a talisman for a more accurate reading. As they leave, the teller ominously warns that one of them is destined to die. Meanwhile, Rang is also at the festival. He meets the fortune teller, who seems to recognize Rang's true nature. Rang offers a suitcase of money in exchange for mysterious items lost from the world, but the teller demands something precious instead. At the same time, Yeon intercepts an arrow carrying a letter asking him to come to the government building. There, he's questioned about a fox incident at a wedding and is soon surrounded by soldiers. Yeon easily overpowers them, but Ji-ae tells the governor that she's only using Yeon to fulfill her contract. This leads to a confrontation where the governor reveals himself as a bear spirit and one of Yeon's old friends. He shares some startling information. The person responsible for killing Ji-ae's parents was human, not a fox, with branding on his head that read, West Seoul. Ji-ae learns that she was the actual target, not her parents. Later, Yeon discovers from his friend that the spirit of the Dragon King resides within Ji-ae, not Yoom, which explains some of her strange behavior. Yeon then receives a call from Rang, who pretends to miss him. Suspicious, Yeon performs a spell on his shoe, inscribing the word find on it. Soon, Yeon and Ji-ae meet with Rang, who takes them back to the fortune teller. This time, the teller reveals his true nature to Yeon. Rang's most precious belonging turns out to be his brother, Yeon, and in exchange for a pair of special glasses, Yeon is trapped and turned into smoke, becoming part of the teller's endless collection. This was Yeon's plan all along, as the shoes Rang is wearing will lead him to the man responsible for Ji-ae's parents' deaths. Oblivious, Rang heads to the TVC president's house, confirming the man's involvement. Desperate to save Yeon, Ji-ae tries to bargain with the fortune teller. She has less than 2 hours to find something precious to trade, and rushes home to retrieve a toy merry-go-round stained with blood. Recognizing its significance, the teller almost refuses the trade, but is swayed when he sees her unique fate. Realizing her handlines have changed, he agrees to release Yeon. Reunited, Yeon and Ji-ae share a meal before heading to bed. While Ji-ae sleeps, Yeon sneaks away to meet with Granny at the academy, revealing everything that has happened. Granny warns that his obsession might lead to his downfall, hinting at a dark future she saw in the tea leaves. Still, Yeon remains defiant, ignoring her advice. As night falls, Ji-ae has a disturbing vision, where she sees herself in a room with the scaled child from the president's house. The child greets her, and when she wakes up, Ji-ae discovers scales on her own neck. However, they quickly disappear. Taluipa reveals to Yeon that the Dragon King's spirit has awakened within Ji-ae. Feeling betrayed, Yeon, in a fit of rage, contemplates attacking Taluipa with glass shards hovering in the air, but Uiong intervenes, calming him down. Yeon then heads to Jia's place and stays the night, asking her not to let him risk his life for her safety. While they talk, Ji-ae mentions a dream about a little boy, who is revealed to be a spirit known as an imugi. Meanwhile, Rang drinks away his worries, showing Yuri the glasses he found that allow the wearer to see someone's past life. Yuri expresses a desire to understand what it feels like to be loved, prompting a flashback to Rang's childhood, where his mother left him. Back in the present, Rang cynically remarks that love can be dangerous. In the morning, Yeon dresses up in a suit and waits in the office lobby for Ji-ae, pretending to be a director. Memories of a warning from Uiong that one of them might die if he stays involved with her cross his mind. Ji-ae, meanwhile, dives deeper into her research, investigating the branding mentioned earlier. The mark on the suspect's forehead ties back to an old tradition of marking traitors, leading Ji-ae to suspect there might be more to uncover. While she's out with colleagues, they spot Yeon, and he joins them for a meal. Yeon eventually receives a message from Rang and excuses himself. Shinju, following Rang, listens as he discusses the glasses with Yuri, discovering that a child took them from Rang. As they drive off, Rang realizes Shinju has been tailing him and captures him, demanding information. Despite being hurt, Shinju refuses to talk. Yeon arrives and understands that Shinju has discovered something important about Rang. The brothers clash, but before things escalate, Yuri calls to inform Rang she has found the child, prompting him to leave. Rang retrieves the glasses from the child, who appears to be his former pet dog reincarnated. Recognizing the boy's past life, Rang takes him out for ice cream, showing a rare hint of affection. Meanwhile, Ji-ae's TV crew visits the president's house. He warmly welcomes them, but warns against touching his cherries. While inside, Ji-ae heads upstairs, unknowingly stepping closer to danger. Earlier, the imugi child was seen feeding on a babysitter, causing him to grow into a young man. The rhythmic knocking of the shrunken corpse on the floor lures Ji-ae, but before she opens the door, she gets a call from Yeon, advising her to leave. Yeon sets out the next day to buy her new shoes, while Ji-ae receives a package from Rang. Inside are the glasses, which show her true self when she puts them on. In the vision, she sees Aeum staring back at her and watches in horror as Yeon slits her throat. Yeon rushes back to find Ji-ae crying silently, having realized that he had sacrificed her in their past life to draw out the imugi. She feels a deep sense of betrayal. The story takes us back in time, where Aeum and Yeon are enjoying their time together. One day, Aeum walks alone to the palace and finds her father, the king, looking weak as he sits on his throne. Suddenly, she notices scales appearing on his body, and his attitude changes to one that is cruel and mocking. It becomes clear that the imugi has taken over the king's body, and Aeum realizes she has been brought there as a sacrifice. Before she can shoot an arrow at him, Aeum changes her mind. To save her father, she asks the imugi to take control of her instead. Fast forward to the present, and we see that the imugi is now hiding inside Aeum, which explains the earlier fight between her and Yeon. This leads to the tragic moment when Aeum is killed, and Ji-ae learns the painful truth about her past. Now back in the present, Yeon faces the harsh truth of what happened. He confesses to Ji-ae that he was the one who killed Aeum and betrayed her trust. Heartbroken, Ji-ah cries, and Yeon chooses to leave her alone. Feeling lonely, Yeon goes to find Rang, who eagerly asks if Ji-ah has uncovered the truth about her past. Yeon brushes off Rang's teasing and asks about the imugi, but Rang refuses to answer. They recall the moment they met in their past lives. Yeon saved Rang from a grudge that attacked him, which led Rang to choose to follow Yeon. In a different scene, the president of the TVC picks ground cherries from his plant and eats them, watching them turn to dust. As the camera zooms out, Rang is seen with him. A faint voice causes the imugi to reveal itself, and they talk. The imugi, however, prevents the president from harming Ji-ae because it wants her to be its bride. While Ji-ah is working, she visits doctors to learn about past lives and discovers her mother was also looking into this subject. GA recalls how her parents had her undergo hypnotherapy to uncover their family's past. Driven by curiosity, GA watches old tapes of her therapy sessions. However, something feels off. A child in the video begins reading the words on the wall behind GA and eerily says, "There you are." Meanwhile, Rang meets a shaman who is eager to uncover people's deepest fears. She arrives at his home and touches his hand, revealing she knows what scares him. Hearing chanting, Rang opens his wardrobe doors, and suddenly he is taken back in time. He searches for his mother, but she refuses to acknowledge him. Forced to confront his fears, he fights off the grudges that chase him through the woods. The same shaman finds GA, asking her about her fears. After a brief silence, she mentions that it must be Yo Gogai. Gia is then forced to relive the terrifying night her parents died in a car crash. As both GA and Rang confront their pasts, Yeon faces a difficult choice. One door leads to Rang, and the other to GA. Ultimately, Yeon decides to save Rang. The two brothers stand side by side, ready to face whatever comes next. Yeon arrives just in time to rescue Rang, and they stand back to back, ready to fight off the dangerous grudges surrounding them. Drawing on the skills they learned during their childhood sparring sessions, they manage to push through the horde and escape. Meanwhile, GA is trapped in a painful memory of a car accident. She pleads with her parents to stop the car, but her cries go unanswered. As the car flips over, shards of glass fly past her face. Back in the real world, GA's co-workers discover her unconscious on the floor. Yuri finds Rang passed out, while Shinju stands outside the two doors, with Yeon lying on the ground. When GA regains consciousness, she finds herself in her childhood home, where her parents are alive and happy. Her mother smiles and tells GA that she has been in a coma for a long time. GA tests this illusion by asking for walnut cookies, knowing she is allergic to nuts. Her mother laughs and confirms this, making GA drop the knife she was holding and embrace this comforting vision. The Juice Lady and Imugi leave Gia's dream, appearing in the room of the TVC president. Their plan fails since Yeon did not come to Gia's vision. The Imugi becomes frustrated and confronts the Juice Lady, challenging her authority. Back in Gia's vision, she tries to piece together the events and remembers the Juice Lady asking about her fears. Meanwhile, Rang questions Yeon about why he chose to save him, but Yeon simply shrugs and claims he picked the wrong door. As Rang stands to leave, he suffers a painful bite on his leg that causes a fever, making Yeon worry about his brother's condition. Before they can explore this further, the vengeful grudges return, forcing them to flee. Yeon realizes Rang must face his fears to escape. He encourages Rang not to give up, promising that a way out will appear if he can overcome this challenge. Yeon sacrifices himself to hold back the hordes, allowing Rang to climb to safety. With the ghostly figure of his mother clinging to his leg, Yeon pushes her off and lets Rang escape. Rang wakes up and tells Yuri that he needs to find Yeon. Meanwhile, Shinju is determined to save everyone. He asks Taluipa for help, promising to do anything to rescue them. He rushes to the hospital, grabs GA from her bed, and takes her back to where Yeon is. Tying a bracelet around them, he hopes for the best. In GA's vision, Yeon calls her, urging her to remember everything and return to reality. After she pricks her hand, she goes downstairs to talk to her parents, promising to find them. Confronting her deepest fear of losing her parents, GA faces the truth and manages to free herself from the nightmare. With both GA and Rang awake, Yeon is left alone in a dark void, feeling trapped and longing to be with GA. As he collapses, the Juice Lady appears and reveals that GA has returned home. Yeon then realizes he has been drawing GA to this place all along. Everyone is forgetting about this urban legend, which could mean the end of the spirit of darkness. After defeating this foe, Yeon reaches into the human world and pulls out a button belonging to the Imugi, smirking as he says, "Found you." The Imugi watches emotionlessly as the Juice Lady disappears. Just as rain starts to fall outside, Yeon escapes his dark place. Gia, now soaked, spots Yeon holding his familiar red umbrella across the street. She rushes over, and they share a passionate kiss. Lee Yeon took Gia to the mountain where he used to live, where his story with Ah-yoom started and ended. After the story ended, something happened, and the villagers were hunting down Lee Yeon. Ah-yoom saved him. Lee Yeon promised to repay the favor, and they were tied up by a fox deal. To save her father, Ah-yoom allowed Imugi to take over her body. She went to the forest and shot her arrows at Lee Yeon. In their fight, Imugi was about to kill Lee Yeon. From deep down, Ah-yoom fought back. She couldn't let Lee Yeon die, and she didn't want to kill more people. Imugi had killed all the people he met on the way from the palace to the forest that night. Using the deal she had with Lee Yeon, Ah-Yum forced Lee Yeon to kill her while Imugi was inside her body. Rang was waiting for Yeon to come over, but when the doorbell ringed, Rang was disappointed. At the door was Kwon Hae-ryung. He took Rang with him to the house. They have a deal made the day Yeon stabbed Rang. Now Kwon Hae-ryung wants Rang to bring him Yeon's body. Lee Yeon had Shinju follow Rang. He was expecting Imugi to get to Rang first, so now Yeon knows where to find Imugi. Imugi is the new intern in Jia's team. His name will be Terry. Meanwhile, Rang visited Taluipa and Hyun Uyong to try and find a way to break the deal he has with Kwon Hae-ryung. The only way he can break the deal made by a fox is to die, Taluipa said. Leaving Hyun Uyong gave Rang another piece of advice. Elsewhere, the police have a new case. A mummy was found at a construction site. Jia went to find more information. Terry followed her there. When she saw the mummy, Jia realized the mummy was missing a fake nail. The same fake nail she found in Kwon Hae-ryung's house. In the next scene, Yeon confronts the imugi, warning him that he should have stayed away. The imugi is no longer in a human form, so Yeon knows that a simple trick won't work. They engage in a fierce battle, moving through an apartment building and teleporting until they reach the rooftop. On the roof, the imugi offers Yeon a choice. If he sacrifices his own body, everyone else will be safe. This unexpected offer catches Yeon off guard. He suspects it might be a trap and decides he cannot trust the imugi. As a storm brews, the imugi uses his powers to force innocent people to commit suicide. Yeon tries desperately to stop them, but all around him, people act violently and he feels powerless. Meanwhile, Jia confronts the TVC president, accusing him of kidnapping her parents. The president demands the mountain spirit in exchange for their safety, smiling menacingly as he hopes she will choose wisely. Jia is horrified to learn that Hae-ryung sacrificed his own family to live longer. He gives her a vial that will make Yeon fall asleep, leaving Jia with troubling thoughts as he walks away. Taluipa discovers that the imugi's power has led to 132 suicides. However, she is not surprised and braces herself for even worse events. Rang watches as ambulances rush by, wondering what the imugi has done this time. Disguised as a worker named Terry, the imugi listens in at Jia's workplace, trying to understand what caused the mass suicide. At the same time, Yeon tries to call Jia, but she doesn't answer. Struggling with what the president told her, she considers betraying Yeon to save her parents. Meanwhile, Shinju cooks for Yuri, hoping to become her friend and family. Just as he starts to share his feelings, Yeon unexpectedly enters and disrupts the moment. He eventually surprises Ji-ae at her house with a gift of new shoes. Su-oh runs away from his stepdad and bumps into Rang. Although Rang initially acts coldly toward him, his protective instincts kick in, and he grabs the man from behind, bringing him to the TVC president as a way to feed his dark soul. Rang then notices that the cherry plant has been moved. Hae-ryung shows a blackened seed and places it on the man's chest, making the fruit appear alive again. The president greedily consumes its essence, calling the man's soul evil. Afterward, he manipulates Rang into agreeing to their deal, claiming Yeon has abandoned him. Rang demands to know where Yeon is, feeling betrayed. In another location, Yeon has taken Jia to meet Taluipa and Uyong. Jia is determined to fight against her fate and wants to use Taluipa's special ability to find her parents. If she can do this, they promise to bring the imugi to her. Taluipa reveals that the key to finding them is ground cherries, referring to the cherries in the president's living room that hold the essence of living people. Rang makes a bold choice and decides to oppose his brother. With the vial ready, he plans to lure Yeon to a location chosen by the president. As Yeon admires flowers, the president watches them closely on camera. Rang asks Yeon what he means to him, and Yeon reveals that Jia is stronger than him, which motivates Rang to follow through with their plan. However, after Yeon drinks coffee and collapses, the president seizes the moment and calls the imugi to say they have captured Yeon. Realizing it's a trap, Rang decides not to sacrifice his family. It is then revealed that Rang and Yeon had switched places to outsmart the president. The previous night, during the brief scenes at the bar, Yeon had asked Rang to stay by his side. As Hae-ryung attacks Yeon with a knife, Yeon skillfully turns the blade and plunges it into Hae-ryung's gut. He demands that Hae-ryung end the deal that binds him to Rang. Hae-ryung agrees to help free Yeon, and the deal is broken, freeing the fox as well. They also retrieve the ground cherries. While this happens, Ga keeps the imugi busy while pretending to be Terry. When she receives proof that the cherries are safe, she reveals her true identity. Although the imugi cannot kill her, he holds her hand tightly and admits he has grown fond of her. Finally, Gia rushes home and finds her parents standing in front of her, safe and freed from the cherries. With Gia's parents back home, a joyful reunion takes place. Gia eagerly learns what happened to her mother and father. Though 2 decades have passed, the memories of the accident feel fresh for them. Rang drives Yuri home, and in a flashback 5 years earlier, we see him teaching her about fighting and how to manage her emotions. He acts as a mentor, guiding her as she learns to control her abilities. Meanwhile, the president arrives home just as the imugi calls him, instructing him to come inside to discuss his fate. Hae-ryung feels uneasy about this and quickly decides to leave. Later that evening, Yeon dresses nicely and prepares to meet Gia's parents, bringing along a small gift, a new car. Although Yeon struggles with small talk, the dinner eventually goes smoothly. He opens up about his feelings for Gia, expressing how much he likes her. The imugi then goes to a restaurant where he speaks to the snail bride. He orders a meal that Yeon would typically have, putting the other customers to sleep first. His intentions are clear as he later visits Yuri, instructing her to kill Rang. Under the imugi's control, Yuri stabs Rang multiple times. When she comes to her senses, she panics, realizing what she has done and finding Rang unconscious. Yeon, aware that the imugi is behind this, debates whether to use the ground cherries to revive Rang. He knows that using them would pull him into the underworld, so he decides to catch the imugi instead. Watching the hourglass run out, he feels the urgency as Yuri tries to help Rang. Soo-oh shows her how to treat his wounds, but in her desperation, Yuri decides to use the ground cherries. She grabs the cherries from Yeon and rushes to the hospital. However, when she arrives, the cherries wither and die before she can use them on Rang. Meanwhile, Gia's co-workers search through old legends about the imugi, discovering that it has a strong aversion to horse blood. As the imugi makes its move, he possesses Jae-hwan and Sae-rom and video calls Ga, showing her the rooftop they are on, now under his control. The only way for Ga to help them is to go to dinner with the imugi, dressed in a black suit he sent her. During dinner, the imugi reveals that he was once human before becoming evil. Ga realizes that he just wants to be loved. However, he turns threatening, declaring that he will kill everyone she cares about. He leads her to a park, and when he asks about her feelings, Ga admits her love is for Yeon. This makes the imugi's smile vanish. Just then, Yeon jumps in to confront the imugi. Shinju unexpectedly helps by saving the hostages, using his heightened senses to prevent disaster. Yeon begins the ritual to banish the imugi, combining horse blood, water, and Ga's blood. However, he realizes he made a mistake. The imugi has split in half, and now part of it possesses Gia. As the spirit awakens within her, Ga's face changes, revealing snakeskin. With a sinister chuckle, she says, "Long time no see, Yeon." After a week's break, the story resumes with Yeon in shock, realizing that the woman he loves, Ga, has been overtaken by the demon imugi, which had been lying dormant inside her. With a sinister smile, Ga asks if Yeon will save himself or her. Before he can respond, they engage in a fierce battle. However, Imugi is weak and struggles to control Gia thanks to her strong mind. Eventually, Ga collapses to the floor in tears. Yeon takes Gia to his place to help her recover. He talks with Shinju about the imugi inside her, noting that this demon resembles one he faced before. With Gia's life in danger, Yeon takes her to the coast. There, they reminisce about their past and the challenges they've faced. In a tender moment, they pretend Yeon is a house husband, allowing them to briefly forget their troubles. As the evening unfolds, Yeon lays Ga down, and they share a kiss. However, their peaceful moment is interrupted when Terry calls, warning Ga that her time is running out, and that she will eventually be the one to kill Yeon. Meanwhile, Hae-ryung drives with a ground cherry plant when Ui-ong appears in his car. Despite Hae-ryung shooting him multiple times, Ui-ong, the immortal guardian, taunts him about the gunpowder smell. With the ground cherry plant in hand, Ui-ong checks with Taluipa about whether they should turn the plants into humans again. However, she is focused on writing down Ga's details and contemplating the date for her death. Sensing something is off, Ui-ong confronts Taluipa, warning her not to change Ga's death date. At the same time, Hae-ryung feels the imugi's wrath which desires to see him and everyone around him suffer. Suddenly possessed, he walks into a police station to turn himself in. Knowing the danger ahead, Jia leaves a message for Yeon, telling him she is returning to Seoul. For now, she waits on the beach, hoping to walk with him to the end. Yuri, wanting to save Rang, offers her own life to the imugi. Meanwhile, Soo-oh watches from a cupboard, witnessing the event unfold. Imugi takes Yuri away and warns Soo-oh that darkness might consume him if he is not careful. Yuri, her fate sealed, visits Shinju and kisses him, breaking up with him and claiming she feels bored and unhappy. Shinju is heartbroken and begins to cry. Yeon drops Jia off at home and then goes to see the snail bride. After receiving advice from her, he returns home to find a crying Shinju and a recovering Rang, who reveals the truth about the situation. Yeon promises to bring Jia back no matter what. Yeon gathers a team of 3 foxes and 3 humans. Jaehwan and Saerom are with Jia, while Rang, Yeon, and Shinju are the foxes. Yeon advises them to avoid confronting the imugi alone and warns that it plans to release a virus that will bring misery to everyone. Yeon has discovered a way to free Ga from the imugi. The Snail Bride has acquired the Sin Slayer, a mythical sword capable of defeating the demon. As Yeon and Rang prepare for the upcoming battle, it's clear that Rang is weakened. Yeon asks his brother for help in the fight. Meanwhile, at the police station, Hae-ryong shows signs of illness, scratching at his neck and arms, with red spots appearing on his skin. Other officers begin to scratch too, indicating that a crisis is unfolding. All characters get ready for the final confrontation at the Snail Bride. Yeon explains their plan. Jia will injure herself to draw out the demon, then stab it with the Sin Slayer. However, this imugi is different, and Yeon warns that the battle will be challenging. If it escapes, it will take the form of a snake. As Jia and Yeon enter the room, they are surrounded by ropes, prepared for the fight. Jia urges Yeon not to hesitate. Suddenly, she slashes Yeon across the back, causing him to collapse. Believing it has won, the imugi triumphantly takes a scale from its neck and places it in Yeon's mouth, allowing it to jump from body to body. However, Yeon awakens in time to spit out the scale. It becomes clear that there was never a Sin Slayer. They were trying to discover the demon's weakness. Realizing this is how the imugi transfers between hosts, it vows to fight fiercely to stay in Ga's body. Meanwhile, Taluipa changes Jia's death date on her computer to today. True to his word, Uiong appears ready to leave his role as gatekeeper. As the story nears its climax, Imugi walks down the street, leaving destruction in its path. The final battle looms, and the stakes have never been higher. With Ga's death date set for today, Yeon holds her close as time runs out. When Ga wakes up, she feels confused but still senses Imugi inside her mind. She urges Yeon to hurry and promises to stay by his side no matter what happens. Holding her hand, Yeon vows to put an end to this exhausting battle once and for all. Meanwhile, Yuri watches in horror as Imugi violently attacks innocent people, leaving destruction in its wake. The situation is dire, and it seems that no one will be spared from the chaos. Yeon takes Ga to meet Rang and the others to share what they learned. Although they couldn't draw the spirit out of Ga, they now understand how imugi moves from one body to another, giving them an advantage in their fight. As the action intensifies, Ga learns about the incident at the police station, and Yeon rushes out to help. Worried that she may be the next victim of imugi's viral outbreak, Jia feels a sense of urgency. A truck suddenly comes barreling toward her, but Uiong arrives just in time to save her from certain death. Rang watches from a distance, realizing something significant is about to happen, and it feels like death is always following Ga. Meanwhile, Yeon confronts Taluipa, the gatekeeper, about her interference with Jia's death. Taluipa refuses to change what she wrote, insisting that Jia must die to defeat Imugi for good. Yeon begs her, kneeling in desperation, trying to save Jia's life. Both he and Jia are struggling to protect each other while facing impossible choices. At the Snail Bride, Mr. Choi chokes on his food and coughs up a snake egg, triggering his fear of snakes. Alarmingly, he has red spots on his arms, indicating that the virus is spreading throughout Korea. Meanwhile, Imugi takes Yuri to a lavish new house, but she is not pleased with her surroundings. In the bathroom, Ga talks to herself in the mirror, demanding that Imugi reveal itself, or she will harm herself. Imugi finally shows up, and Ga confronts it, stating that her death date has changed, which means she could be going to the underworld soon. She then receives a call from her parents, confirming that imugi is with them. GA vows to harm it if it touches her parents, realizing the danger they are in. Imugi commands Jia's parents to hang themselves. Just as they are about to obey, Yeon arrives and saves them at the last moment. Later, Yeon and Imugi strike a deal. Yeon wants revenge and offers to kill Taluipa in exchange for GA's life. He gives Imugi time to consider his proposal. Yeon informs his team about his plan, which is actually a trap to catch Imugi, devised with Taluipa. Meanwhile, Hae-ryong, infected with the virus, pleads for help from Detective Baek, who turns out to be Rang in disguise. Rang frees Hae-ryong from his cell, giving him a gun and instructing him to go after GA. Yeon and GA go out for a last meal together, aware of the looming danger. GA mentions she only has 2 days left, echoing Imugi's words, and wonders if this is their final meal together. Yuaeong connects the dots, realizing that Choi, who is Haija's husband from her past life, is too convenient to be a coincidence. As the sun rises, Yeon's phone rings with Imugi's decision. It will ally with its enemy to fight Taluipa. However, Rang knows this alliance will not end well. Meanwhile, Hae-ryong confronts Jia with a gun, firing several shots. The screen fades to black, and we cut to GA waiting for Yeon in the rain. He arrives with a red umbrella, and together they sit down to enjoy noodles. GA surprises the president by shooting him in the chest, having transformed into the imugi after being injured. Hae-ryong, bleeding on the floor, taunts her, saying the imugi is neither human nor spirit before he dies. Meanwhile, Yeon and Imugi engage in a battle of wills, with Yeon insisting he is stronger. However, Imugi gains the upper hand and demands Yeon take him to Samdo River. Yeon's plan involves using poison to trick Taluipa, the gatekeeper, and he intends to use Uiong against her in this scheme. While Haija takes care of Choi's illness at the Snail Bride, Uiong is also present and clearly misses Taluipa. He struggles with whether to return to her or not. Yeon confides in Shinju about his plan to jump into Samdo River and swallow the scale of Imugi. Shinju, wanting to sacrifice himself instead, is quickly discouraged by Yeon, who leaves while Shinju holds back tears. Jia meets Rang and realizes that Yeon is planning to sacrifice himself for her. She places a gun on the table, saying if she hurts Yeon while under Imugi's control, she will take her own life. Yeon and Rang share a meal, with Yeon teasing his brother and giving him a boiled egg to eat. Yeon feels a mix of sadness and affection, realizing it may be their last meal together. Rang talks to Shinju about Yuri, stating he will never approve of their relationship, but agrees to take him to see her. Yuri, feeling abandoned, is touched when Shinju arrives. Watching from the door monitor, she struggles to hold back tears as Rang promises to save her, while Shinju shows her a ring box, causing her emotions to overflow. Yeon and GA decide to go on a date, as the virus seems to have stopped spreading. They enjoy their time by the shore, making wishes for the future. Gia expresses her hope to save them both, but the weight of their situation hangs heavy. Taluipa calls Yeon to her place, expressing how Haeja's words affected her. She reflects on her son jumping into Samdo River and admits there is a way to save both him and Gia without sacrifice. While Gia is still in danger, she receives a call from Imugi, who lures her outside with promises of an antidote. However, there is no cure since Imugi was born from a plague. Gia transforms into the other half of Imugi and warns him not to trust Yeon. When Yeon finds Gia in this state, he learns that the governor has been attacked. As Imugi whispers to his followers, they turn against Yeon. Now facing both Gia and Imugi, he struggles in a fierce fight. Gia loses control, and in a desperate act, Yeon swallows the scale after Gia almost shoots herself. Rang bursts in to confront Imugi, but it's too late. With everything seeming lost, Gia comforts Yeon as he reveals his true plan. Earlier, he had eaten primroses, one of Imugi's weaknesses. This gives him the power to shift the balance. Holding on to Imugi, Yeon gives the sword to Rang and tells him to stab them both. Rang hesitates, but ultimately plunges the sword through them. As Gia rushes to him, she watches as both Imugi and Yeon fall. Just before they disappear, Yeon tells Gia he loves her. Yeon and Imugi fall into the river, where Imugi dissolves completely, vanishing into nothingness. The virus that once plagued Korea has vanished, and most people rejoice in the streets. Yeon returns to a fully recovered Taluipa, who laments her inability to save Yeon. Outside, Gia knocks desperately at the door, hoping to be let in. Once inside, Gia begs Taluipa to bring Yeon back, but Taluipa refuses, explaining that there are rules in their world that even she cannot break. Shinju arrives and takes the wine bottle from Reng, urging him to get it together. He then reveals a touching video message from Yeon, reminding Rang of the importance of family and all the good he has to offer. After this, Gia and Rang try to find ways to move forward. They find comfort in sharing their memories of Yeon and his unique traits. Gia mentions her plan to write a book called Tale of the Nine-Tailed, and they swap stories about Yeon's life. Meanwhile, Shinju proposes to Yuri, serenading her with a song on his guitar. She happily accepts, and everyone gathers to celebrate their engagement. 6 months later, Ga completes her story, and it's also her birthday. Her parents gift her a red scarf, reminiscent of Yeon, along with a present he left for her. Inside is a stunning white wedding dress and a letter about their shared moments, causing Ga to cry as she reads it. Later, Ga and Reng notice the fortune teller's tent from before has returned. They enter and inquire about the possibility of bringing Yeon back to life. The fortune teller tells them they need something valuable for this task. Ga first offers her memories of Yeon, but when that doesn't work, she bravely offers her own life. Rang refuses her offer and selflessly proposes his own life instead. As they disappear, only a picture of Rang with his friends remains on his phone. At work, Gia steps out into the rain, where an employee hands her a red umbrella, the same one Yeon used. They tell her that it was delivered just 5 minutes earlier. Looking across the street, Gia sees Yeon, alive and well, but now in human form, still carrying his memories. As life continues, Yeon struggles with the challenges of being human. When a boy falls off his bike, Yeon is reminded of a younger Rang and wonders if he has been reborn in that child. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our video. Watch the next recaps on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.